Hello everyone, how are you doing today? Right, so this is the first in the videos I'm going to be recording today, so expect some issues. But today, this one is the one that's going live today, because I'm re-recording again today's video. And today's video is, as you can guess, a UAD Infused one, and it's, well, I promised when I did the UAD Infused discussion on capital ships in an Equitable Washington Treaty, I said, right, I will give you in this video, the US versus Japan ships. In the future, I will give you the UK versus the Japan ships, and then I will give you the US and versus UK ships, or etc. And I might even, as time goes on, when we're adding in cruisers, etc., and going through the capital ship, add in the cruisers and actually do sort of fleet actions. It depends on the poor little computer and whether it can survive it. So, this is going to be today, UK versus Japan. And we're going to see how those super Nelrods do against the super keys. And it should be fun. It should be fun. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to go slightly off topic, but then I'm going to be discussing history a lot while you're going to watch the videos. But well, the thing is, I get royalties at certain points during the year from my book, and I have been telling you the story of the book the whole way through. I have been giving it to you as it comes in. I've been explaining it and going through it with you all. And really, I do this for two reasons. One, it's because you've all been so supportive of me. But two, it's so that if there's other historians coming up, young historians, they realize what the realities are. So, I have sold 947 copies, all included. That's how many have been sold so far. 947. Woohoo! Not quite 1,000, but 947. That's really cool. That's good. So, I have received for that today a little over £200. Now, before you start thinking that's pen and sword being nasty or anything like that, no, it's literally what happens is once you're being paid money, and I know how much I'm owed in royalties, but then from the royalties, they deduct any advances and all the money they gave you beforehand while you're writing the book. So never ever treat the advances as something extra. They come back, they get them back from the royalties, and that's fine. That's what it's supposed to be. But that is how it comes. That's also the reality of why, this is going to sound terrible, why so many historians, if you don't get an academic post, a full-time academic post, and especially for young historians, if you aren't lucky enough to find a university which really likes your research technique, your research style and emphasis, or has an opening which you fill the niche of, and don't have their own PhD students who they want to funnel in there, which is, again, perfectly fine. They've spent the time training them. It's perfectly sensible if they want to use them. Why they drop out? Even when they have PhDs, even when they have good things to say, they can't make it work. I am incredibly fortunate. I have a steady but strange role with Kingston University, which is academic skills in history of engineering, and that's 3 days a week roughly. So that's helped me keep going. I've had work with Justin Craig because I've been a revision company, which I do a lot of work with, which really helps. And I've had all sorts of other lecturing posts which have come up at different points, and even lectured at Cambridge and all sorts of fun things I have done. Cambridge was, well, the one I was paid for was the summer school there, which was really fun. Teaching the future of war. Now, that was a cool course to run and teach, especially when I gave them all water pistols and told them to go shoot each other. Well, you know, you had to have an actual understanding of what you were talking about, and I decided water pistols were the least likely things to break the anything and everything. And they could have broken anything and everything. It's fun times. But most importantly now, I have you. I have YouTube. I have Patreon. I have all the funding which has been given me very kindly on fundraiser for the Haida trip. That is a huge part of my income. That is a huge part of my ability to sustain myself doing this history work. This is one of the reasons why I'm quite so, I have to say, I'm quite so professional, and I hope, in my approach in making sure I do deliver the videos as often and as regularly and as higher quality as I can. Because without that income, it would be difficult to see, especially with the way of inflation and all the other things, of how I can actually keep the history life going. And I'm lucky. I don't currently have a girlfriend. I don't have any commitments other than my extended family, who can mostly take care of themselves, apart from me doing their DIY. So I'm okay. I'm literally supporting myself. And I can do that on what I have. And I can do things like the Haida trip on what I have, which is great. So that's thank you, and that's down to you. But this is a problem we have in not just history, but in the whole wider of economy of academia and research, in that the established academics and the ones who have resources behind them, for whatever reason, okay, and there is nothing wrong with having resources behind you. It makes you incredibly fortunate, but it doesn't make you a bad person. Please note, I'm not saying that. They will keep going. They can. That's what the academy becomes about, to an extent, because it's very hard for the people who don't have things behind them or don't have extra sources of income. I.e., in my case, you, through YouTube and Patreon and the generosity, and Justin Craig, and all those sort of earnings I do outside of the academic environment, to be able to sustain the funding, to be able to sustain the work and keep going. So thank you. And also, please note, that was one of the reasons why why the camera, I was hoping to try and find a camera in the £200 bracket, 150 to £200 bracket, that would be suitable for doing the videography of Haida. Because I wanted to use the first check from the royalties to cover it. Doesn't look like that's going to be a possibility. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will now get on with the actually far more interesting. Well, it's going to be a discussion of the various forms of battleship involved, of me going along and talking along it while you see a Royal Navy squadron versus a hypothetical Japanese squadron and see what happens. I think this one could be interesting. I'm going to give it roughly the same amount of time I gave to the US-Japanese squadron in the discussion that came out in the Washington Treaty series. And yeah, it should be fun. So, without much further ado, and to make this directly 9 minutes, I'm going to say in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See you in a second with the video. And here we go. This is going to be fun, isn't it? Yes, we have what I'm considering the clash in the Singapore Straits. Basically, this is the scenario I want you to think about. The Royal Navy has surged forward. Their squadron, their alert squadron, their Indian Ocean battle fleet has surged to Singapore, ready to engage the Japanese. The Japanese are trying to get to Singapore. They know Singapore is the key theatre hub. If they can attack Singapore, they don't even have to take it. They're not actually trying to do an amphibious assault or anything like that. They're just trying to get through to it with their battleships and blast away at it. Because if they blast attack Singapore and disable the facilities there, then that is going to slow down the British access to the Far East. Basically, Singapore is not going to be the operations base. Even the Japanese know that, the British know that, everyone knows that. Singapore, that's going to be the base that supports the logistics hub. That is the strategic hub, the theatre entry hub. It's going to have the dry docks and all those facilities there. And damaging the existing facilities there will delay the British build-up by weeks, if not months. So the Japanese have surged for it. Unfortunately for them, despite their ships being faster, they're capable of 30 knots, the British Indian Ocean Fleet was commanded by an admiral who was nervous. The sort of man who, well, when he goes away on a 2-night trip, will take a couple of spare pairs of trousers as well as a few pairs of shirts and pants extra, because, you know, he doesn't like the idea of, if contingencies happen, him being in the wrong place. And in this scenario, what he decided was, well, it's 1926, we've had a lovely treaty going for a few years. I'm going to mosey my fleet over to Singapore, just in case. Just in case. Here you go. These are the mighty super rods. This displaces 50,000 tons fully loaded. Now, there's a reason it displaces 50,000 tons fully loaded, and it's kind of a sad one. But I started working through the scenario of the water as armor, all the things the British were adding in, and then I worked out if it was a bigger ship and engines and how much extra water it would need, and I went really, really geeky. And when I say really geeky, I mean I went full Excel spreadsheets. And I came out that the British would build something which is roughly 40,000 tons in standard, but would grow by almost 10,000 tons to fully loaded. Now, the Nelsons, as are built, they grow by roughly 5,000 tons. That is long accepted. But the thing is, the Nelsons only go to a speed of 23 knots. And as we all know, the more powerful your engines are, the more water they use. And this becomes the reality. We are talking about a fleet here which are 28-knot ships. They're going to use a lot more water than a 23-knot ship. They're going to have a lot more powerful engines. They're going to have 4 shafts. They're going to use a lot more, especially if they're built using the consistent technology at the time. So I did some maths. And honestly, it came out at 49,900 and something tons. And then I couldn't be bothered, so I just rounded up to 50,000 and said that'll do. And this is based on the British gaming the system as much as they do later. Now, please look at my design. It's got 9 16-inch guns forward. It has got 2 triple 6-inch turrets, because I could, and 4 twin 4-inch turrets for AA work. It has got quad torpedoes. And it has got a lot of armor. And I mean this when I say a lot of armor. We're going to see what the Japanese are up to. I have been working on... these vessels have also been worked on in a full Japanese fashion. They are very capable. They are, of course, capable of 30 knots. And being capable of 30 knots does give them a 2-knot advantage. They also have a 1-gun advantage. Yeah. They have a 1-gun advantage. But the British have 7 to their 5. which does mean that whilst they have a 1 gun per advantage per ship, so the Japanese have 50 guns, the British do have 63 guns. For what that's worth, over 7 ships. The British are the more efficient hull design. The Japanese are the more traditional design and allows them to carry more guns and spread out their guns far more with those 5 twin turrets, so that does give them survivability on their guns. But the British have been able to pack in more armour. The Japanese are faster, but they're slightly more lightly armoured. The British are 28 knots. They're not quite as fast then. This is going to be a battle royale. We have Valiant, we have Canada, we have Albion, we have Colossus, Agamemnon, we have Venerable, and somewhere in here we do have, yes, there we have Jellicoe, which the class is named for, because, well, if he's got his free fleet plan, it seems sensible that one of the battleships built be named for him. That does mean we probably end up with an HMS Beatty, but as you notice, she's not here at the moment, so we can presume she's off sinking somewhere else. I'm being nice. I think Jellicoe might actually be the flagship. Yep, she is. That's rare. Hang on, no, Valiant's the flagship of Division 1, and Jellicoe's the flagship of Division 2, so, yeah, Jellicoe's got the second in command. That makes sense. That's okay. I will accept that. They're currently wondering if the Japanese ships are battle cruisers rather than battleships. After all, they're going at the tremendous rate of knots. 30 knots and 10 guns does give them an advantage. It does. But it doesn't give them as much advantage as they had with the Americans. Versus the Americans, they were outnumbered in guns tremendously because the Americans had those 12 guns, but the Americans were only capable of 23 knots. What's the reality is that the British ships and the Japanese would both have a whip hand when it comes to speed and picking engagement versus the Americans. The British speed is only a 5-knot advantage, the Japanese speed is a 7-knot advantage. It gives the Japanese strength and allows them to dictate when the battle is, but they means also that their ships compared to the Americans are going to not be able to slug it out. The British, conversely, by reducing the top speed and going for a ruthlessly efficient design, accepting the poor rate, the fact that the aft is not going to have the same rate of fire because, well, they don't have any guns back there, but have an all-forward battery, does allow the British a certain advantage in that they can carry a fairly decent load of armour. Meaning they have almost as much armour as the Americans and almost as much speed as the Japanese, with not quite the firepower of the Japanese, but not that far off that a single ship in a ship-on-ship action is going to be in that much of a disadvantage. 9 versus 10 with the rates of fire of 16 inches not going to be a massive disadvantage. But what it does mean is with their numerical superiority, they're going to outnumber them in guns, and they're going to have enough speed that the Japanese aren't really going to be able to run away, or rather run away fast enough. This is the point. You have a top speed of 30 knots. That's brilliant. I have a top speed of 28 knots. We can probably match each other's acceleration profiles within, give or take, up till about 28 knots. And then you can start getting faster than me. But that means you're going to have to use that in a straight line to get away from me, to be able to get away from me in any time at all. And the fact is, while you're trying to get away from me, I'm going to be firing at you, you're going to be firing at me, and the worst place you want an all-forward firing ship is behind you. Now, admittedly, the Japanese have an advantage in that they have 6 guns, which can theoretically cover their rear. But That's 6 to 9. So suddenly the Japanese going from outnumbering the British guns to having less guns. And let's be honest, the Japanese ships are not as well designed for those to fire aft as the super nail rods are designed for their guns to fire forward. Are you two actually having a ramming fight? Because, don't take this the wrong way, Setsu and Heel, but you are literally playing into their hand. Look, this is happening because of you, Setsu. This is you. It's all on you, Setsu, not Heel. It's all on you. I'm not sure what the AI's decided, but oh, that's just not good. One thing I would say is I've done a video which I recorded earlier, which I set in 1930, which was one I was considering for this. And to do it in 1930 rather than 1926, where I set, it originally I was going to go back. And I might play that at some point. And for you all, and the thing is, radar makes a big difference. Let's be honest, once you have radar. But also it made me think, when I was thinking about that, is if you have a constant drumbeat of warship production, of battleships coming into service, and they're all supposed to be roughly the same tonnage, then everyone's going to be looking for that little marginal advantage which allows them to win. Everyone's going to be searching for it. And the first thing you're going to be looking for is accuracy of your guns. If you're all building 16-inch guns and you're all building with this, you're going to start pushing. So you actually might see an acceleration of radar. And gunnery radar might come into service far earlier than it does in real life. Literally because you do have a drumbeat of ship construction. And with a drumbeat of ship construction, you're going to have people looking at these things seriously and trying to implement them. And that's more incentive. Because let's be honest, the British have a gap. They are doing upgrades, but from the time Nelson and Rodney enter service, it's not until King George V enters service that they have a new battleship. And oh my god, what are you guys doing to these poor Japanese ships? Okay, let's go have a look at it. Okay, so... Alright. I will admit, these are gorgeous ships and very, very capable. But even I didn't expect this to be happening. Okay, Canada is on fire. Oh, Canada, we pledge ourselves to be doing well, but on fire, but looks fairly well surviving on that one. So is Albion's also on fire, but managed to put it out with water spouts. That's what a stern wave is for. But the Japanese, well, Setsu and Hiryu are in trouble. They are. That's the only way to describe. These two have been bashing into each other and have managed to get themselves into trouble. Ki is okay. Aso is okay. And I consider this a fairly realistic scenario. And Kaio is, well, she's been bashed, but she's not bashed that bad. But thanks to their earlier scrummaging, Hiryu and Setsu, and this is what I find annoying. Setsu was the one who did the scrummaging, and oh, wow, you guys have gone fully into range. I suppose you're trying to protect your friend after you caused all that calamity and caused them to get bashed, but that's not a good position for you, because that's a lot of shells. In fact, there's part of me wondering if you're now in 6-inch range. Are you in 6-inch range? You are! You're in 6-inch range! That is not something you want to be in when you're dealing with something which has 16-inch shells. If you're in range of their 6-inch guns and you're a battleship sized, that is not a good chance, a survivability chance, especially when you have a lot less armor than they do. And even I admit that I over armored you compared to the Japanese plans. So I put more armor in you than you were supposed to have. But no, that's just that sort of list is not good. Let's be honest. When a battleship starts a list like this, it makes it more difficult for it to aim its main guns because it can't angle them up to the point. But also, they have in real life, this would be the point at which the other battleships can pretty much direct fire straight into their deck armor. And deck armor is not supposed to deal with something coming almost straight at it. So you don't want to heal over like that. You don't want to be in that scenario, and I'm fairly sure Hiryu is going to go. And Setsu is running away now, deserting her ally. You did this to Hiryu. Setsu, I am disappointed in you. But, excuse me, you don't want to get, so you do not want to get out here on your own. You are a long way from support. You're a long way from support. I'm not sure what's happened to the Japanese Navy here, but their command and control seems to be disintegrating rapidly. I'm guessing one of those ships back there earlier, Hiryu, yeah, she's sunk. Yeah, that's not good for the Japanese. So they've gone from a 7-5 scenario to a 7-4 scenario. And literally, the difference between this, the Americans had far more firepower. The Americans, I can show you every exercise. The Americans have firepower, and it's the firepower versus speed conundrum. And the Americans and the Japanese, they will go on pounding each other, but never really get the hit, and get to decide the battle. It's a sort of it's a numbers thing, and everything else is going to be a factor. But one of the things you notice is that the British ships, when I've done testing, they have not anywhere near as much firepower as their American counterparts. They really don't. I'm talking. This is 9-12, so the Americans, in an equal fight, the Americans always outnumber the British in guns. But the British have enough speed to dictate the pace of the battle, and the British have enough armor to be able to stand there and take some of the hitting. Despite this, I'm fairly sure Jellicoe is going to be in severe trouble, because Jellicoe is basically getting everything focused in on it from the enemy. And it's those two over there which have really boxed in Jellicoe. But yeah, the thing is, again, the British are gonna be fine with well, they don't really want to exchange ship for ship, but they will if they have to. Asso's on fire. No one wants to go ship for ship, but if you're starting with a 7-5 advantage and the enemy's already down to 4, again, what would I do in real life if I was in command? I would be pulling probably I would go look at my ship which is most damaged, and I'd tell them to go off home. Oh, Setsu. Oh, you're now getting boxed in, are you? I'm sorry. I was rooting for the Japanese in this scenario because I was hoping this was going to be the time where the Japanese actually won. They haven't won anything, but I thought they could do a fighting withdrawal and get away, but they can't. You do not have enough. The rule of thumb I tend to give people is if there's a 3-knot advantage, you can dictate the pace of battle if you are equivalent ships. A battle cruiser will need a 5 to 6-knot advantage over a battleship. They need to be able to not just get away; they need to be able to get away in good order before the guns can really settle in on their target. And this is remembering that battleships tend to practice their gunnery a lot and tend to be very, very good at gunnery. In the case of Setsu here, she has a problem. She has only a theoretically 2-knot advantage over the British, who have, again, their armor is only 15.9 inches at the thickest compared to the Japanese. So it's not that much more advantage. But the thing is, I will admit that the armor on certain parts of these ships is far thicker than on the Japanese. The forebelt, aft belt, those sort of scenarios have far thicker armor. You don't want to be in 6-inch gun range of these ships. You do not. Oh no. Valiant, you are in trouble. But appear to be blasting away happily, but you're in trouble. You're definitely not in a good... I am going to lose ships in this fight, aren't I? I know I am, but actually, this fight, I might actually play the whole way through. I might actually let you go. I was going to limit it in length to the same length as the previous one, but I'm tempted to see if it depends on how quickly this happens. Setsu. That is something, of course, that real Royal Navy Admirals would have dreamed of having, being able to click at the top and go, what are the stats of my opposition ships? And what are my stats? Oh, well, those 3 are doing okay. And these ones. Canada, Valiant, yeah. But Setsu is in trouble. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Setsu goes next. From that point onwards, the British then have a more than 2-1 advantage in ship numbers, and yes, they've received damage, but if I was the Japanese commander, I'd be getting well out of that. It was come up with a realistic scenario for why the battle fleets would be engaging each other without all their support, or their supporting. That was sort of came to my mind, and it was the 1926, especially, is a good year for the battleships to be doing that, because the carriers haven't yet really come into service in large numbers. The carriers will all be sort of held back to an extent, and they'll be for the major fleet actions and for reconnaissance. And if I was doing a raid and I had battleship construction, I would be using my new battleship to do a fast, rapid raid. Admittedly, though, I'd have probably, the moment I saw Royal Navy battleships on the horizon, gone, turn around now! Oh, goodbye, Setsu. Yeah, there is no chance of you surviving. And the sole, as I said, if you were going on a top trumps, you'd go American ship. You have more armor. You do. American ship, you have more guns. You should win. And they really are the more powerful. I would say this wholeheartedly in this scenario. If you carry the American standard design of a ship, you will produce the most powerful battleship. But the most powerful battleship isn't necessarily the one which wins the battle. It's the battleship which is the best balance of firepower, armor, and speed. Remember when I was showing you sort of the triangle and the scenario had come up, and I tend to bring up the sort of design paradigm of warship design, and I bring it sort of the diagram, which some people have very nicely made better for me. The point that comes in more often than not is that you want your battleship to be as close to the center as possible. But the trouble is getting it close to the center when you have developments in firepower you do. There's the tonnage you need when you're dealing with 12-inch guns to get it close to the center, and there's the tonnage you need when you're dealing with 16-inch guns, or 18-inch guns, or 14-inch guns, and that all changes. Now, these three are all pretty much daggling in on the poor Valiant, and I'm tempted to take Valiant out of this and just take her off. Detach from division. And I'm sending you away. At maximum speed, please. I'm just making you going to survive. I'll let the others fight this battle. You, Valiant, are going off somewhere else. You're just going to get as far away as you can, as fast as you can. So you can all concentrate on Valiant as much as you like. No. And I do that. I'm going to get you away, Valiant. I don't want you getting sunk today. I want to have a perfect record. And I don't need you to go in there and kill them to get a perfect record because, well, even without you, I have 6-3. And you're just sucking up shells at the moment for me, which is useful, because whilst they're concentrating on you, they're not concentrating on my other ships. Mm-hmm. They're down to, Albion's down to 19.9 knots. Whew, they're still going fast. And Setsu is... Well, to be fair, Setsu, you deserved it. After what you did earlier, you deserved it. So, which one of these do you think is going to get bashed most? Ooh. Key's already got trouble steering. Asso's in command. But, yeah. I have a feeling it's going to be KO. Yeah, that managed to stop that being a big accident. It didn't happen. Right then. Gonna stick you over there, get you out of this battle line, and then put you on AI control and just keep her safe. Okay? Just keep her safe. While you all do your level best to be annoying to the Japanese. I have to say, I also possibly gave them a slight range increase versus the nail rods as well. I might have given the Jellicos again for this for reasons of this game that also did factor into their weight. Weight. I could have probably made them slightly lighter overall if I hadn't been going to give them a slight sort of range increase. Because the trouble is with this game at the moment, as it sets, you can't set a cruising speed. So you're setting the range based on their top speed, which is not the case. The Nelson and Rodney, they had a top speed of 23 knots. They had a cruising speed of 16 knots, at which they could do 7,000 nautical miles. Now, myself, I like a cruising speed of roughly 18 knots. I'm not sure why, but that's always been the speed that sort of attracts me. I think it's a decent cruising speed. And if I was going for a 28-knot ship, that would probably be where I would set my cruising speed as well. And I would probably want to range about 8,000 nautical miles, but that's because I like to be able to do from the UK to the Falkland Islands in one go. And then have filling at the Falklands. But that is all my personal preferences. The trouble is with UAD, this is the one scenario thing I find somewhat fun, as I said, is that they do require you to do a range at maximum speed. So the range and maximum speed of my battleships is roughly 10,000 kilometers. When you consider the range of the Nelsons was 13,000 kilometers at 16 knots, that's a slight differential. Hang on. Fairly sure there are the Japanese are trying to work around here. No, Valiant, you are not going to get sunk. Not on my watch. We are getting you out of this battle line. Far away from the battle line, okay? You know how to keep doing this 10-knot run around to keep you away from the Japanese. I'm doing it. You might be named Valiant, but you're not going to be Valiant. Hello. There you go. There's the three of you. You can't see Valiant, but I know where Valiant is. And Valiant, if you are looking at the screen right now, Valiant is about in that direction above BB Key. Yes, she's not far from Key. And yeah. The Japanese are trying their best to get away. We've got a speed advantage going on. Yeah, they've limited to that. Albion's limited to 19.9 knots. They're going along quite happily, but Colossus is the only one which is capable of 27.2, so almost full speed. The rest are 24, 25. And you are going to do your best to keep going in this direction. I am not letting you sink, Valiant. I am not. And yeah. Ready to fire. They're all out of 16-inch ammunition. Oh, well, this could be the reason there is a problem. The Japanese do have some ammunition left. This is why the firing stopped. Okay, no ammunition in any of my ships. Barring Valiant. Okay, Valiant. No, we're not doing that. They all have 16-inch ammunition left, but that they want to chance it by getting close enough to the British to actually fire it, considering there's only 3 of them, and they know there's a British coming up. I think we're going to call this the end of the battle, because if we run out of ammunition, I am not continuing on the fight. The British have burned through ammunition. Hang on. Oh, no. Agamemnon has ammunition. As has Albion. Valiant, Agamemnon, Albion have ammunition. Let's see if any of the others do. We found ammunition. We have found ammunition. Canada is out. Venerable is out. Colossus is out. Jellicoe is out. So, let's see. Boom. Boom. Gonna have to do something I didn't want to have to do. Let's find Canada. Oh, Canada. Okay, so we now have 3 ships which have ammunition in them, and 4 ships which don't. The 4 ships which don't are basically trying to behave like they're insane. Okay. Routes into a squadron which only has 6-inch guns, 4-inch guns, and torpedoes. Is it me, or are these ships actually starting to look like they might not be doing that well in some regards? They're doing their best, but Key is definitely falling behind. Kaya is overtaking her, and Aso is keeping out in front as far as she can. Yep, I think the only way I would end up winning this fight, if I was going for an absolute kill, which I would be in a game, but wouldn't of course be in real life, is if I decided to charge forward with my battleships without any 16-inch ammunition, get them into 6-inch gun range, and loose off torpedoes. But seeing as I'm not suicidal, and I am trying to do this real life, I think this is where the battle would probably end. With the British pretty much out of ammunition in 4 out of 7 ships, and the Japanese 3 remaining ships limping away, going, "We survived." So, thank you. Now, I've saved it all, but one last look at these glorious ships over here and see what they've been up to. Look. Nice to wait. Stop fighting. Go away. This is very unhistorical. In real life, you would be getting away as fast as you could. And in real life, I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to try and risk getting into 6-inch gun and torpedo range. This is not what you do in real life. Jellicoe, you're brave. Colossus, you're insane. Venerable, well, you live up to your name, and... Oh, Canada. I don't know. You're trying your best, all of you. You're trying your best. You are trying your best. So that was fun. That was fun. Not exactly unpredicted. I've run these tests a few times. and on a couple of different computers actually, because I like to try and check my data and check it's not being caused by anything outside it shouldn't be. And the more I look into it, the more I start to think that my view is that the British would be the all-forward firing ships for the first generation. I think you would get 3 cycles of British ship being able to do all forward firing ships, and the others being traditional. So I think you would get 1920 to 22, 1924 or 3 to 24. Well, 1920 to sort of 21's production, 22 to 23, 22 and 23's production, and 24 and 25's production. But I wouldn't be surprised if from 1926 onwards, if the Japanese and the Americans, if they're still building ships, don't try to go for their own all-forward gunships. They might not. There are disadvantages. You can't really do all four. You don't want to put a turret farm up there of battleship guns. You don't want to have more than 3 turrets. So if you're trying to go for more than 9 guns, I suppose you could go for 3 quadruples and try and put 12 guns forward, which would probably be what the Americans would try. Oh, good lord. Oh, 12, 16-inch guns forward in 3 triple turrets. Oh my lord. You do have an unfair advantage. In the American scenario, if you've got those 12 quadruple turrets, you're then going to have trouble with the Panama Canal, because let's be honest, a quadruple 16-inch turret is going to make your ship fat. It's also going to require you designing the turret. The Japanese conversely could do it, because they don't have to worry about the Panama Canal, Suez Canal, or anything. They only have to worry about their own infrastructure. And that's their big problem. There again, they might stick to a more traditional design and decide that they can balance it. The Japanese might straight up just cheat. They might. And the Americans might also start to sort of cheat, but in their own American way. Alternatively, there is the actual reality which could happen, and this is something which I don't discount. Everyone decides that's just a European affliction, the all-forward turret design, and they just keep on piling on with the traditional lineup. And going, yeah, we don't need to take any notice of that. Until a battle happens. The sort of institutional bias approach. Or alternatively, for the Japanese, as said, because each battleship becomes almost a one-off, they might try it one-off and see how it evaluates. Thinking, well, we'll do it for one ship and see what it works out like, and see what we can get for one ship. The Americans also might do the same, go for, well, we'll build a pair of ships like it and see what it's like. And that could end up with each battle line having some ships in them, which are all forward gunned. I think the most interesting reality check you have in this scenario, and the reason I'm, in many ways, I put forward the argument that the Washington Treaty made World War II far more likely than the Treaty of Versailles, is you have to look at the number of generations of battleships which have been constructed by the British by the time you get to the 1930s. So let's say Hitler and Mussolini and all those things still rise and still happen. Well, when Hitler's looking out at Britain, yes, we're still perfidious Albion. Yes, we're all we're this naval nation that doesn't really take as much attention of Europe. Well, takes more attention than he sees we do, but doesn't take as much as perhaps we always should. But that's because it's always balancing the rock and the deep blue sea. And in many ways, you need to give both a lot of attention. But it's very rare you get a government that can actually give, that has the knowledge and understanding to give both enough attention. The point is, when he's looking at it going, I'm going to build battleships. Well, they're building them. They have them. They are building them already. You know, a nice way you're looking at going, I can build the best battleship with my technology I can. Can you really? Have you seen how much technology has advanced in battleship terms? And the battleships you're dealing with from the Royal Navy at this point will be 16-inch gun, forward-armed, 28, 30-knot ships. We all know the reason the Germans build the Scharnhorst is because that's the best they can build at the time. They can build an 11-inch gun ship. Ouch! It has enough. They, you know, there's that often quoted thing that Gneisenau just about gets away from Rodney by going up to full speed and managing to get away after spotting Rodney coming around. And that's with Rodney limited, theoretically limited to 23 knots, maxing out probably somewhere in the region of 25 knots. Have a 28, 29 knot Rodney in that place. That's maxing out possibly a little bit faster than that, thanks to her captain doing the same, you know, having the similar effects on her engines as Admiral Lee had on his ship's guns. Gneisenau doesn't get away from that. In fact, in many ways, you force the Germans to start to really consistently evaluate their scenario and look at that. Because you built Bismarck, well, that's great. Nice way. Have you seen the fleet? By the time Bismarck would have come into service, there wouldn't be a single Royal Navy ship from World War I in service. They'd all have been used. They'd all been sort of replaced. An entire generation, 2 generations, 3 generations possibly, of Royal Navy battleships would have emerged since World War I by the time World War II came out, if it comes at the same time. And with a level of controlled competition, that's what basically you're replacing a treaty which tries to stamp out any competition with a treaty which allows for controlled competition, you know, competition within boundaries, a structure. Will have pushed technology on dramatically. The Germans don't rank in then. Under that scenario, Hitler is very much in a scenario of looking at it and going, what can I do to match this? There is nothing. So they either have to pursue an offset strategy, or even if they do go with the strategy they adopted, it always looks almost hilarious. Or to try and build bigger and better, that they're going to key everyone in. You know, there's a limit to what you can. The Japanese can hide their construction far better than the Germans can. The reason why? Well, it's far more difficult for someone like me to pass unnoticed wandering around Japan than it is in Germany. In a nice way, it makes intelligence gathering a lot easier. There's also far more connections with the companies, commercial contracts, and far more tourists passing through Germany. Far more ships wandering around their ports, especially where they're building ships. All these things mean that you get far more information out of Germany than you do from Japan. The other interesting scenario, of course, would be Italy and what they would have done, and France and how that would factor into it, because remember, the German fleet is really built more with the French in mind than the Brits when they're initially sort of building it, and the Soviets. That's another scenario. If you have this constant production going on, how does Stalin react to it? We know he was desperate enough for battleships when there isn't a constant production going on. If there's a constant production on and the battleship is very much still the symbol, not just the visible symbol, but the constantly percolating symbol of what a major power has. And that adds then another factor for the Germans. What you end up with is, as I keep returning to this lovely phrase, sivi pacem para bellum. Those who seek peace should first prepare for war. Or rather, should prepare for war. I was adding in the first bit myself. Because the Allied powers, for want of a better term, if we're going to be very simplistic and diatomic, in World War II, the good people, because the trouble is, once you have the Soviet Union and Stalin on your side, there is a and that's before we get into all the joys of empire and all those things. But no, for one of the good, this is the bad, to make it very simplistic in Hollywood, the good guys are basically disarmed by their desire to avoid another war and their misreading of everyone else drawing the same lessons from that war. And them thinking that by disarming themselves, they're making the world a more peaceful place. Ultimately, this is my whole problem whenever people start proposing unilateral disarmament of anything. I sort of go, I look at it, that's a nice idea, and I wish the world worked that way. I wish the world worked in such a way that a nation could do something unilaterally, and it would set an image, it would set a tone for which people would then follow. And there are countries which have disarmed. There are countries which have got rid of all their nuclear weapons or all those things, and they have done this grand thing, this great gesture, this hope of leadership. And it would be lovely to be in a world where that would be enough, where that would lead to it. But we aren't. What happened with the Washington Treaty, what happened with the subsequent naval treaties, is that Britain and America, and to an extent the Allies, fooled themselves into believing that they achieved a maintenance of peace and status quo by treaty that prevented construction. And in reality, they created a scenario, a very dangerous scenario, rather like that at the beginning of the dreadnought, of the armaments race, with in the early 1900s, and they set themselves back. The really sad thing is, arguably, Britain was far more prepared for war in 1914, and it wasn't really that prepared for war, but it was far more prepared for war in 1914 than it was in 1939. Far more prepared for war. And if you consider the Dreadnought race started in 1905 with the launch of HMS Dreadnought, and then we completely mucked that up by then building the three Invincibles, and then finally going, oh, you know what, we need actually a full squadron of battleships. Oh, you don't say. So just having one isn't enough. No, we actually need a squadron, because other people think they can build one as well. Oh, frig. And that's what leads to all the issues with the race, because you make a great statement and then you drop it. You make a great statement and then you drop it. And that is That is British government policy leading up to World War One in its entirety. You want to avoid World War One. The best case for it actually possibly getting through to the Kaiser that this was that Britain and therefore the key power as far as he was concerned in his own little mind that would of the Allies that could have been involved. You mobilise the whole Royal Navy and you send them out to sea. It doesn't matter if they're ready for it or not. It doesn't matter if it looks aggressive or not. That's the whole point. It's supposed to look aggressive. It's supposed to look like, we're strong, we're going to do something, so don't do it. And yes, it can come across as being a bully, because honestly, to an extent, you are bullying a bully. You've tried things nice, you have tried things politely, you have tried things the best, to get everything the best way you can, and in the end, you're dealing with someone who's pushing because they think everyone will back down and they'll get their way. And then your only option is to stand up and look strong and look as menacing and scary as possible. And that's ultimately the problem of the Washington Naval Treaty. It stops anyone being able to stand up and look as menacing and scary as possible. It means that the Japanese feel that they can't win in a long war. Well, can't win in a short war, let alone a long war, because they feel they're so outnumbered by the Americans, which forces them to seek all sorts of things and also see the world constantly through fear goggles. That's where that ratio comes in as a trouble. And it means that in Europe, the British are doing the same thing as they did with the launch of HMS Dreadnought. They're resting on their laurels. Look at what are the ships they are dependent upon? Queen Elizabeth class. Okay, yes, we'll make a big fuss of Hood. We'll send Renown and Repulse and Hood around the world. But let's be honest, the real strength of the British battle fleet doesn't sit with Nelson and Romney. They're lovely, but they're not fast enough or powerful enough all round to be able to do the job. They've got 9 16-inch guns. They are very efficiently designed, but they are very slow. No, what's the Royal Navy dependent upon for its muscle? It's Queen Elizabeth class battleships. And oh, great. What did it do straight after that? It built the Royal Sovereigns, which, of course, were slow. So, yeah. World War One arguably happens because Britain mucked up its diplomatic messaging when dealing with a bully. And World War Two happened, arguably, at least in the Far East terms and in terms of dealing with Japan, because Britain and America had made this country see through fear goggles, and no one had managed to build up enough build their ships up to a quality enough that they were actually as strong as they were supposed to be. The paper strength looked great. Anyone who actually studied the real tables and knew the reality and was an actual naval officer with understanding of this stuff knew it was nowhere near that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. As said, I have done one which is, and you saw the save of it, recorded in 1930, which I was going to use instead at one point because I thought I'd do it with radar to show you what would happen with radar, because radar actually makes a big difference. Once you develop radar, if you're the Japanese, it does even things up with the British a tad. Not much, but it does even it up a tad. But yeah. Shows you the impact technology can make. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and take care.